welcome you to Inovare. Yeah, this is where we innovate. This is the podcast where changes are made. If you're not growing, then you're dying. Innovation is the key to surviving. This is Inovare, where we ain't scared to make that change and create a new way. If you're ready to learn and sit back and just chill, it's about to get real. This is Inovare.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inovare podcast. I am your host, Roy Edwards, and I got a good one today. So this is season 3. So I don't know if that's important to anybody out there who's counting, but I am really excited about this. And here in season 3, we're going to get a little more technical. We're going to get into some tech stuff. And who better to kick off like business technology than this next guest? I mean, if you guys are familiar with walkthroughs or how-tos, or really just you've searched any type of internet thing out there, blog, YouTube, whatever, it doesn't matter. This guest, she is all over it. She's my go-to with anything Microsoft related. So really excited to have her in. She's the process automation princess, the SharePoint Siren, and the Karaoke Queen, which I might have to ask about that one. That one, I need to prod a little bit on that one. She's a woman who codes but teaches others to build apps and automation with zero code. As an active community member with her YouTube and blog, she's a former MVP and regularly speaks at events across the country as a Power Platform developer advocate at Microsoft. Welcome into the Inovare podcast, April Dunnam. April, how are you?
Good. That was quite the introduction. First of all, I love the intro and the song there. And then, yeah, what a cool intro for myself.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, I wish I could say that was me singing or rapping or whatever, but it's not. My buddy Joey, but thank you very much for that. And speaking of singing and intros, I'm going to ask you about the Karaoke Queen, because that one I have to know more. So please do tell why are you the Karaoke Queen? I
mean, I just love karaoke. So I like putting that in my bio. I was saying like since I was a little kid and choir and all that. And, even playing some bands here, so with my husband and a friend. And I just, karaoke is a regular occurrence for me on Friday nights.
So what's your go-to? Now we're like, I'm off script already. But what's your go-to karaoke song here?
So I love rock music. So probably Highway to Hell by AC/DC is my go-to song.
Highway to Hell. That's a good one. I figure, so I'm by no means a karaoke star in any form of the fashion. But I find that the more that you get the crowd involved, like songs like that, then the more fun it is, right? I'm not like I'm not the next American Idol. So I think that's a great choice.
That's the key, right? Karaoke, that's what I love about it. It's not about being a technically good singer. It's about being entertaining and having fun and getting other people involved. So yeah, there's really no judgment. So that's what I love about it.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. So here we are to talk to you about some cool technology stuff, which we have a very similar background, which I'm sure we'll get into here, but we both come from the SharePoint world, which is how I found you in the first place. And then as Microsoft has evolved and they do all these Power Platform stuff, us SharePoint people, we had to evolve with it, right? So first off, before we get into anything specific, in that bio that we talked about, there's the Power Platform Developer Advocate. So what is a Power Platform Developer Advocate?
Yeah, so great question. Let's talk about what developer advocates are in general. So you might have heard the terms evangelist or maybe developer relations. So that's kind of the same thing. So we have advocates, evangelists, developer relations. Really our main goal as developer evangelist and advocates here is to represent software developers. And so, our goal is to be the voice of the user. So doing that, we collect feedback from people using the product. So in my case, I'm focused on Power Platform here at Microsoft, but we have advocates for all kinds of technologies, from the Microsoft 365 stack to Azure and JavaScript and .NET and all of that. So we kind of have our own little focus areas that we work on. So again, just collecting feedback from people using the product. So like, does something suck in the product that we really need to address? Is there something missing really big that we need to add to make it more valuable? And another key thing about it is, is there content missing? We we want to really make it as easy as possible for people to start using the Power Platform. So if there's gaps in the content that we provide that need to be filled to make it easy to start using our products, we want to, as advocates, get that feedback and make the content necessary, which is partly what I do with my YouTube channel and blog, and creating documentation and content on the Microsoft blogs.
I love it. And so with that portion of it, right? So if I hear that correctly, with an advocate, and I'm going to throw a tech term out there, which I know you obviously will know, but for the listeners, so there's CI/CD, right? Continuous integration, continuous development.
Yep.
And a part of that loop, in the feedback loop, is feedback from the end user. So I assume the advocate plays a very vital role in the customer and the user base in understanding that next version of the release. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you perfectly summed it up. I mean, that's our big goal. We want to get that feedback and get it back to the people internally that can make and implement whatever feedback that is from the community and from the people using the products. So we want to be that intermediary there to get that feedback and make things happen.
Yeah, I love that, because a lot of people think that, so Microsoft is huge, right? And there are, AWS, I know we're not supposed to talk about Amazon. I will only say it for a couple seconds. But those companies, they're so large, and you go to the events, and there are like areas within Microsoft that are like small businesses that are there to help. And you have those small business advocates, you have the Power Platform teams, you have all these different teams where you're more approachable. I think it's really cool. I love what Microsoft and others in the industry that we won't mention are doing to make it more readily accessible. I think it's really cool. I think the advocate is one of the cooler things that Microsoft has done. So well done. Bravo. So now that we've gotten to the job description out of the way, what's your background like? So like I said before, we have a similar professional background, but like, did you grow up with like a computer in the house and running on kid pics and stuff like that? Is this April's backstory?
Yeah, pretty much. I was kind of always that computer nerd growing up. So no one in my family, oddly enough, was like really technical. They didn't have any, technical type jobs, but I just got interested in it in a young age. So started building, I think I built my own computer when I was 9. So got into that then. And I, got into development. So to kind of pay my way through college and early on in high school, I had my own little side business where I would make like WordPress sites and all of that for extra cash to pay my way through that. So just something I was always really passionate about and liked, and I knew that I wanted to do something in this field. Took me a while to figure out exactly what, but I was always a technology nerd.
Yeah, not alone there. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. So were you around for Angel Fire? Do you remember Angel Fire? It was like these free websites, basically. It was like, here, free hosting where you can build on HTML or whatever. Yeah. I had like 5 or 6 of them, and they were just spam, come to find out later. But they were like free websites you could build on. And I went, and built a bunch of websites and fell into this too. And it when you immerse yourself into technology, sometimes it's not always clear as to like where you want to be, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to build process automation for business enterprise, like I don't know many children who are thinking that. So as you went into college, so when you went through your college years, did you get so I don't have a tech degree. I have a communications degree because my dad was like, you need to get a business degree, building website stuff, get out of here, So like, what was that journey into like the professional world, like through college and such?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, it was what I find really cool, that end up in tech. A lot of them don't even have tech degrees. Like I know several people here at Microsoft that have, marketing degrees or, art degrees and things like that, and then kind of work their way through that. Mine, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do. So I thought, I like helping people, so maybe I'll go into teaching. So that's kind of what I initially went in for. But then I kind of segued into, I was also like passionate about politics. So I kind of changed my major probably about 3 or 4 different times between political science and education and marketing. And I finally landed on information technology. So I didn't go for like the hardcore computer science, but I kind of felt like the, MIS path would help me do both business and maybe like marketing type side of things, and building cool stuff, which is ultimately what I decided that I wanted to do, and then possibly even teaching. So I had all these kind of passions, but I just couldn't decide the way that I wanted to go down. So I ended up in the MIS, double majoring in MIS and marketing, and I didn't really find, I think, exactly what I wanted to do until an internship that I had in college at a local casino. So I kind of had the chance to rotate between the different segments in the IT department there, like so help desk and of course the application development department. And that's where I really found my passion for developing and SharePoint, because they were in the middle of a big SharePoint implementation then. So I got thrown a headfirst in the C# book and said, learn C# development. I hadn't did really much development up until that point. Learn this and help us write some custom web parts for our new SharePoint implementation. So kind of stuck with it ever since. And that's how I found my way.
I love the journey. So teaching, I find, is one that I see a lot of people in the IT field where they went in thinking they're going to be teachers or something. And I think that helps with everything that you're doing, right? That when you're making the videos and everything like that and speaking, and I think there's a lot of ties and a lot of correlation there. Do you think that going in through education as opposed to going for like a CS degree, do you think that helped you ultimately?
I mean, yeah, I think having that experience, I ended up only having a few of those classes before I switched my major. But I mean, going in with that mindset was really helpful, because, if one thing, it teaches you that, one of the key things is patience, right? With any of this, whether you're teaching, kindergartners to, IT professionals, you need a lot of patience to walk people through things. So I think that was the biggest thing that I learned from going through a few of the education courses, and, how to break things down simply. So try to target the audience that you're talking to and explain things in terms that make sense to that audience. Yeah.
I sometimes our end clients are very much like school-aged children, right? Sometimes.
Yeah.
Without naming any clients. But yeah, no, I totally get that, where you're trying to break something down and introduce something to somebody that often seems like a foreign language. You have to break down barriers or explain it in different ways, because technology in itself can be intimidating. Big time to somebody who doesn't understand where, and that's kind of gets us into this whole trends of low code, no code, which is where Microsoft is starting to move with the Power Platform, which you're an advocate of, and when you're building it. And so I had a very mixed feeling when it was released, much like when you talk about WordPress. So I grew up a developer, and so when I'm developing and I'm writing code, and then all of a sudden now people can click and drag to build websites. And I'm like, well, what about me? Like, what am I going to do? And so as a SharePoint developer, now you're saying that I can spin up things without having to do any coding. And I kind of like felt hurt a little bit for maybe like, I don't know, not very long, don't worry. But it was very interesting to see, because now with this low code, no code movement, you're putting the power into power users instead of developers, where we have this switch almost where you don't need a full development team. You really just need somebody who understands kind of the flow, and it's more process oriented, which I love. So tell me a little bit about low code, no code, and the movement from what I just kind of stumbled around, whereas movement from developer to just somebody who can understand processes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on something, really good there. I mean, and that we do need to address, right? Oftentimes for, code first developers, that are used to programming in traditional languages, you could be a little bit fearful of a technology like the Power Platform. Is my job going to be needed anymore? Are my skills needed? I think it couldn't be further from the truth, though. And we're seeing that really play out, because we're seeing a lot of what we're kind of calling fusion development teams. So really, if anything, all low-code platforms like the Power Platform are doing is actually giving us a way to expand our development teams. We're always going to need people, like myself and yourself and all the code-first developers out there that know how to write C#, JavaScript, whatever it might be, code. But we're just giving an extension point. And it's really, what I find cool about it is making it to where the code-first developers can focus on what they actually want to focus on. So I don't know many code-first developers that love building in authentication for their applications. And typically, we all have some area of development we're passionate about, like whether it's front end, back end, and all that. And a lot of times, I don't know about you and the jobs that you've had, but some of my early on jobs, I had to be the jack of all trades there. I had to do everything. But with, Power Platform, you can choose, like, if you like backend development and building APIs is your thing, you can leverage those skills to bring those into the Power Platform so that, citizen developers, whatever we want to call them, people that know the process really well, can help you through getting those requirements and even build out maybe the front end of it within Power Apps. But you inject all of the much needed business process and AI, API integration and things like that into the process and bring your skills there.
Well, I feel better now, so thank you for that. And so, your Power Platform is the new shiny tool. I guess it's not that new anymore, but there are still a lot of organizations out there that it is relatively a new tool for, and it's a lot of a learning curve. Some of them think that, oh well, I don't know when to implement it, and I don't know when to start with it, and so there's a lot of different views out there, mine included, that you have to kind of take different steps to get to Power Platform, or some others think, hey, let's just start from Power Apps, and then we can build things around that. So I would love to get your kind of view as an advocate to say, when is the appropriate time to introduce Power Apps into data? It doesn't have to be SharePoint, although I know a lot of organizations are coming from on-prem and they have the SharePoint list already, but I would love to get your point of view as to when is the appropriate time to introduce Power Apps.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe talking about the SharePoint aspect of that, and maybe when to introduce that. Obviously, I come from a SharePoint background myself. I've been using SharePoint for several years now. It has great use cases with lists, right? We can build lightweight applications almost just leveraging SharePoint list and surfacing that up to, have new form information, input that, and see it in the list. So there's still always going to be use cases where a SharePoint list alone is sufficient for what you're trying to accomplish. But oftentimes when you need to go beyond that. So when I start thinking of scenarios where we maybe want to use Power Apps instead, is when we need to inject data from multiple different sources. So maybe you want to have data from your SharePoint list and be able to integrate that, but maybe you also want to pull in information from Planner or an Azure service somewhere, whatever, SQL Server, whatever it might be. That's when Power Apps can really help, and when it starts becoming beneficial to leverage that in your application. Also, do you need to do anything complex in the solution that you're building? Is there a lot of kind of conditional logic involved in that? So if someone selects this, then I needed to do this and that, and maybe have permissions built into the process there in the application to show different pieces of information to different groups of people. We can do all of that easily with Power Apps, leveraging, merging in and mixing in different data sources, writing to other systems, easily integrating with Power Automate for workflow automation, and easily, adding in that conditional logic. So that's when the decision point really becomes helpful from a SharePoint perspective. And really the same applies for whatever you're using, whether it's Excel spreadsheets or, Azure or whatever it might be.
So do you have like some common use cases of like, is there something that more people are asking for about Power Apps more so than others? Like, are there popular use cases that people are coming to you with?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've done on my YouTube channel, for example, is Template Tuesdays. So I started building templates based off of, before I joined Microsoft, I had my own consulting company. And I started off in the SharePoint development space doing a lot of, custom code, but we kind of segued to Power Platform consultancy. And I noticed when I was doing that for a few years that I had several common themes and applications that I was building time and time again. Some of those are, things around time management, whether that is a timesheet application, a clock in, clock out process, and then also maybe submitting time off, for paid time PTO requests, things like that. That's a really big area where I see that. So kind of those more, HR type scenarios, all the way from operations scenarios, inspection reporting, applications that you might be using, say, in the field. So something that if you have someone needing to be able to pull up their mobile phone and inspect an oil rig in the field or whatever it might be, those are also great use cases for Power Apps because it has that support for desktop, mobile, and tablet baked in. You only have to build the application once, and it's be able to use between all of those platforms. So those are some of the different examples that I've seen common themes there.
Yeah. So time has been a big one for us too, especially since you mentioned clock in, clock out. So with SharePoint and Microsoft 365 as a whole, really, you get into like those compliance measures. And that's why I think a lot of organizations are using Microsoft over other tools that are out there, is because the compliance built in, the security center, everything that goes into the Microsoft 365 platform, right? HIPAA, and all those fun acronyms, right? And we just built a time management portal, which is on a Surface, and it's a Power App where you clock in, clock out, and all of the other data that's captured on they don't know. You type in a PIN, and that will populate all the other data from the SharePoint list, which is already captured. So we're building a ton of those too. Like I had never, when I first got into SharePoint, it was more for like document management.
Yeah.
And then, which I think is what everybody kind of thinks when they think of SharePoint, they think of documents, but there's the list aspects and the calendars and the tasks. And there's so much other things that you can do with it that is really, I think, brought more to life through the Power Platform that maybe they didn't really know about or was kind of overlooked and ignored. Like lists, which we don't have to get too big into SharePoint, but I'm a SharePoint nerd, so I love to talk about this.
Same here, so we can talk about that all day.
All right, good. So the list application that Microsoft just released, to me, it's just a way to get people to pay attention to lists that have been there forever, like the custom lists. Like I just did a YouTube actually on how to create a SharePoint list out of a template from lists, so that, because they're creating a list and creating columns and conditional formatting and all that stuff, it's time consuming. But now Microsoft has sent us this list application, which at first I didn't know what it was, and I kind of like looked into it for a while, and now I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, you give me these things that are already pre-built. This is fantastic. But was that the purpose kind of behind the Microsoft release of lists, was just kind of to get people to pay attention more to the capabilities that SharePoint has had for years?
That's the thing too. I think is important to note. Most people don't realize is Microsoft List is really just kind of a rebranding almost of SharePoint List. So, I think one of the goals of that was to, in a way, be able to maybe abstract the SharePoint list, because one of the other big things with Microsoft List that's to point out is it gives us the ability as well to create a list where the data is connected to, say, someone's personal OneDrive account rather than an actual SharePoint site. So if you needed a use case where you need to track tabular type data like that, but not necessarily be tied to your internal department site, we can personalize those as well. And it gave us a new list application on our mobile device to better interact with those. And then also, to your point, I think one of the other big things it did was show how you can easily create, better looking and easier to use lists with conditional formatting and some of that SharePoint list formatting capability that we've had there for a while that might be a little bit hard to get into initially if you're starting from scratch, but by providing those templates, it makes it way easier to get started.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I was kind of iffy about it at first. I was kind of like, I feel like this is kind of like a cop out. Like, why are they releasing this application? And now I'm like, this is incredible. Like, I love it now. So yeah, it's very cool, and it plays into the Power Platform. I'm like a believer that the Power Platform can do anything these days. Whereas before, so there was InfoPath is kind of how I see that has evolved into the Power Platform. I guess that is like Power Apps is wiped InfoPath off the planet, which thank God, because that app was not my favorite.
Oh yeah, I did way too much InfoPath forms development and SharePoint Designer workflows in my days. So believe me, that's why I was such an earlier adopter of the Power Platform. I was doing this consultancy, and like 80% of my time was building InfoPath forms and trying to maintain them. And heaven forbid if you have to do code behind an InfoPath form. So that was horrible and miserable. So as soon as I heard about this Project Sienna thing, which turned out to be Power Apps, I was all on that and started switching over all of my clients' stuff to that.
I love it. I think it's so cool. The Power Platform is constantly evolving, and you're constantly getting new updates, which I think is the coolest part about this. One of which was released in March, which I think you did a YouTube video on, was Power FX. And so the Power Platform as a whole has long had, for those who don't know, Power BI, which is for reports and business intelligence. Then you have Power Automate, which used to be called Flow, which is essentially just automation within your environments and tying everything together. I think it's kind of like the ribbon. And then you have Power Apps, which builds applications inside of your business, which I can't tell you how many people have DM'd us or called us or emailed us asking if we can build them a phone app. I'm like, it's kind of different. So, but that's what Power Apps is. And then there's a new one called Power Virtual Agent, which we'll get into here in just a second. But with Power FX, it ties in all of these applications through universal language. So what all went into that, and thank God it came through. But with Power FX, are we going to start to have to rebuild our Power Apps or our stuff around this new language, or how is that going to work?
Well, so to break it down, Power FX really is not anything new per se. It's more about Microsoft saying their end goal for the language itself. So in Power Apps, we have two different types of apps. We had what was called model-driven applications, and then we have Canvas applications, which is what I tend to focus on, is the Canvas app side of things. Now, in our Canvas applications, we've had a way since the beginning, kind of like a formula language, which was based off of the formula language that Excel uses. So if you go look at some of the functions that we have in Excel and compare that to the functions that we have in Power Apps Canvas apps, there's a tremendous crossover. So that's what the Power Apps Canvas app language, now known as Power FX. So they just pretty much gave it a name. We never had a name for it before. We just said, oh yeah, the Power Apps formula language. Now it's called Power FX. And what they did with this is they've released the vision to make that a holistic language across the Power Platform. Because right now, if I want to go, format a date time, I do that in a Canvas app one way, but the formula for doing that same thing, say in a Power Automate workflow expression, is completely different. So what they're announcing is eventually, not today, but eventually they're going to unify that approach where we have a one holistic language like that we can use across the entire platform. So there's less barriers to entry, having to learn how to do, a formula this way in one product and differently in another product.
Yeah, which I feel like there's enough technology updates out there that there's so many people that are learning different traits and different certs and different, which if you were to start out it all over again today, is there a specific certification or path that you would go down or recommend others to go down? Because like I just said, there is like a million different certs just like within Microsoft, I feel like. So like which way would you go or tell somebody who's looking to get into the industry?
Well, for Power Platform specifically, we actually have a ton of different certifications and they kind of build on each other. So we have the one I recommend starting out across the board is our Power Platform Fundamentals. I believe it's the PL 900 course, because that kind of covers all the Power Platform products and really focuses on, do you understand the difference between the products and the use cases for each? So that's a good level set, because if you're wanting to get into the low code space, you need to be able to identify the differences between all the products and when you would use them. So that is where I usually start. And there's a good learning path on docs.microsoft.com that walks you through everything you need to know about that. I believe it's about 8 hours or more of content on there that you can walk through for that. And then we have, other certifications that build off of that based off of what you think you want to do with the Power Platform. So I think I've taken all of the certifications now. The next one that I did was the App Maker certification. So that one is if you actually want to be someone building applications on the Power Platforms, whether that's in Power Apps or Power Automate, because an application in the Power Platform usually is a mixture of all the products in one way. You typically don't have a Power App, for example, that doesn't interact with the flow in Power Automate in some capacity, or maybe has a Power BI dashboard in the back end to be able to analyze and surface up your data. So that App Maker really goes a step further into some of the specifics. So we just talked about Power FX. It might go into what formula do you use for, to do this date time formulation or whatever it might be. So that's usually the next step.
Awesome. Yeah. So I had not heard of the 900, the what did you call it? Is it PL 900?
Yes, I believe so. I'm pretty sure it's the PL 900, Power Platform Fundamentals.
I'm going to look at, so I'm taking the MS one. It's like the Teams trainer or something like that right now is where I'm going. Because I'm like, there's so much to learn. There's so much. And when I got into the industry, certifications, it was like, what do you mean certification? Like, what is that? That was years ago. And so I just kind of played with everything and learned just by stumbling around. So now I love all these training resources. Like I said, I watch your YouTube, like that's my trainer. You're my guru. I didn't know if you knew that or not. You're
No,
so
cool.
yeah, I mean that's like where like a lot of developers I feel like are learning these days is you go onto the YouTube and there's so many tutorials, there's so many great resources. And so PL 900, I'm going to start making all my developers take that. So sorry guys, but and so that leads into virtual agents, which I feel like I could be wrong, and I've been wrong multiple times today. And Power Virtual Agents is this chatbot functionality, which does it use the Power FX? Or will it?
No, it's a little bit different. Yeah. So it will, it all will eventually, but it's slightly different. You don't really need in Power Virtual Agents to write any formulas. So kind of how it works is if you need to do any kind of logic at all like that in the agent, like maybe go pull data from something, you're interacting with Power Automate. So we have a call and action capability in Power Virtual Agents that lets us go execute a flow in Power Automate and return data back to the agent. So kind of all of that type of logic layer, formula level type stuff would be done in Power Automate.
And so what would give me an example of how a business would use Power Virtual Agents?
So many different use cases. I mean, really, it's for any customer service type scenario, right? So I mean, we've all used virtual agents, I'm sure, in some capacity. Like if you have a issue with your order and you need to, figure out how to return it, right? You're probably interacting with a bot and a virtual agent there to go return information and send you a printing slip. Or, maybe you're trying to find out more information about what are your store hours? You've probably interacted with a virtual agent a lot as well. So those are some common use cases. Another one that I see a lot in like corporations adopting Power Virtual Agents is HR type scenarios. So, things that you might have emailed your head of HR or something for, like, hey, I forgot when our company holidays are again, or how do I submit my time off request? Those kind of simple questions, those knowledge-based type things where you could easily put a Q&A together that someone could go read. But the benefit of taking that capability, that knowledge-based type stuff, and integrating that into a Power Virtual Agent bot, being that it gives a more chat-based, conversational interaction with that, rather than saying just go click on this link and read this document on SharePoint to see that. So, and I think that's something that's changing right now, is people want more of that conversational-based interaction rather than just go reading documentation.
So there are very few times when I don't feel like I'm crazy. Usually I feel like I'm just absolutely insane. And thank you for bringing up like the HR bot. So we built a VA internally, and I built it around the onboarding process. So I took all the questions that people usually asked me or HR, and exactly what you said. When are the holidays? How do I register for 401k? What's our health insurance? Like, how many days off do I get? And we put it into this Power Virtual Agent. And so people like using it because it's like fun almost, they're like, oh, I'm going to do it again. Let's ask it again. Let's run this back. So like that part of it, I feel like is cool. It's a lot. And you get a quicker response than just like writing me an email or shooting, which don't ever, please write me an email. Anybody internally, please don't do that. Or they shoot me a Teams message, something like that. Right. Where the bot, I feel like is more fun to use, and it's quick and it's easy to update. Like, that was our first use case, was it's our onboarding bot. And so thank you for not making me feel crazy, because that was like, when I saw it for the first time, I was like, that's it.
I mean, right. It's the perfect use case. That same thing with like common IT scenarios. Like, I don't know how many times when I was doing SharePoint stuff, I built IT knowledge bases for businesses on their SharePoint sites, where we had a nice little accordion to click through and see the questions and answers for common things like, how do I request a new device? Or why isn't this working? How do I get started using SharePoint? Things like that. Those are easy things that make total sense to use a bot instead. Because like you said, and people actually like interacting with those. I mean, it is fun, and it's way more entertaining than having to sift through information. You can just ask it exactly what you're looking for, not have to scroll through the page to find it. It's just so much better. And I think I read something interesting, like 15% of customer service scenarios now are automated in some capacity with bots. So I think that's just only going to grow.
Yeah. Do you think that bots will take, so like there are intranet homepages, right? Which is SharePoint has kind of long served as the intranet, where we have the hub sites and the communication sites and all of that. And so what we've been doing is we've just basically been taking virtual agents and putting it into our communication sites. And so it's a few clicks and then there's your virtual agent.
Yep.
But do you think that ultimately virtual agents will kind of take over intranets, or do you think there'll always be a place for an intranet?
That's a great question. I don't know. I kind of feel like there's always going to be a place for an intranet, right? I mean, I think we want that kind of holistic landing page where we can see information and consume it how we want, right? I mean, there's always going to be some people maybe that don't want to use a bot for something. And I don't know. I just really feel that there's always going to be some kind of use case for an intranet, but I think we're going to see more and more integration with bots for more specific scenarios, though, in our intranets.
Yeah, I'm a big internet fan, but like I said, we are, a lot of our buttons or clicks or heroes or all of it with it basically points to a virtual agent at some point in the flow. But I'm with you, and I love the hub sites. I love the way the new look of the communication sites in the SharePoint environment look. And I mean, the Power App platform is only getting cooler and cooler with all the buttons and galleries and the transitions. I think it's the coolest thing in the world. So whatever you guys are doing over there, you can put me down for the check mark of I think it's really cool. So, well, I thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me. Good luck on your next karaoke venture.
Thanks. Yeah, this was fun. I could just keep chatting all day about all this.
Well, let's do it again, because I could talk about SharePoint and Power Platform for forever. So I would love to have you on again. And I'm going to, if you say yes, I'm going to hold you to that and push this all over the internet. So, but I would love to do it again. It's been great. I love nerding out on Microsoft stuff. So thank you so much for entertaining me.
Yeah. Happy you asked me to be on here.
Yeah. Well, guys, that is the process automation queen. There she goes. We'll have a little clap for you on your way out. There's the standing ovation. I wish I could give you more of a standing ovation, but here in the COVID world, that's all we're going to get for right now. So thank you very much, April. Guys, go check her out at SharePointSiren.com. She has a great YouTube channel. Like I said, I watch her YouTube pretty much, I'm going to say daily, and I require people in my organization to watch them. They're all over our team channels and everything like that. So guys, definitely go check her out. And welcome to season 3. Again, guys, if you like this, what you just heard, you're going to hear a lot more of it here in season 3, because we're going to get a lot more technical, talk about some business use cases and ways that you can build some low code, no code things and take real action in your business today. So welcome to season 3, InovarePodcast.com. That's where you can listen to all episodes, including this one, or you can go to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, all of those fun places if you like listening to podcasts instead of watching them. Well, guys, hope you had fun. Hope you learned a few things. And until next time, see you.